Welcome back to the channel. We got my boy JP in the chair. JP brought me some really sick hair. I haven't even taken a look at it, but the reason I didn't is because I wanted to go through it and assess it with you guys as well. So first thing I'm gonna do with JP's hair is actually assess his head, what the hair type is like, what the density is like. I already know that there's color. I can see that the roots are very obviously popping out. But I know that with this haircut, what we're gonna really do is accentuate the nape, add a lot of texture because right now it's sitting quite flat. And I really want to do something cool with the fringe in this area. JP's actually got a nice amount of length. The easiest way that I'm gonna do this when it comes to assessing his head is actually using the comb. So if I just place the comb on certain areas of his head, lets me know where it's flat, right where the comb leaves his head, it's letting me know that's his frontal area, the frontal bone where the head is starting to round off. In this area where the comb sits at its highest point is known as the apex, which is the highest area of the head. And then even in the back here, so JP's kind of got the same issue as I do. The back of our head is fairly flat, which lets me know that I can actually go shorter internally here, disconnect it maybe slightly, not as disconnected as the first haircut that we did. And the priority is for JP to actually be able to wear this, for him to rock it, for him to style it. So I'm not only concerned about how the after shots today are gonna turn out, but I also want him to be able to enjoy it, style it the way he wants to, while still making it look good. Okay, so let's take a look at the head. The reason I'm not wetting the hair right now is because I want to see how the hair naturally sits. I'm going to assess its growth patterns, see where the hair wants to bend, where it sits flat, and then I'll get into wetting the hair and we'll section it. So immediately I can tell that the top was actually cut triangular. You can see how the lengths in the fringe are a lot longer than the lengths in the crown here, which I actually like because it lets me know that I can take this quite a bit shorter while still maintaining length in here. Another thing when it comes to the fringe is just kind of taking a look at the hairline. JP's not really dealing with too heavy of a recession, so I don't really have to be too concerned about these corners. But I think the biggest problem, the area, is going to be the back. So that's where I'm gonna choose to start this haircut. So if you guys have seen the previous haircut, when we did the shag on Sergey, in that consultation video, what you would have noticed is we did the entire initial assessment, consultation, that first conversation with him without the cape on. And the reason for it again was just to be able to, like, you know, observe their style, observe their likes and dislikes. And I already know JP is a pretty fresh guy. Came in looking pretty swaggy for me today. Which lets me know what I can do with his hair and what I can't do with his hair. He's not gonna want some cookie cutter, let's call it boring hairstyle, which is why I think giving him a mod is actually gonna suit him very well. And I think he'd rock it very well. So this part of the process is gonna include putting the cape on him. Now we can get into wetting down his hair and sectioning this haircut. Okay, perfect. Now we can start the sectioning. Like I said, the back is the most troubled area. So I'll start with sectioning off the back first. And again, guys, the best way to do this is by looking at the growth pattern. I actually want to see where JP's hair naturally falls. And the hair kind of lets you know, like, it does its own thing. It has a life of its own. It'll show you where it wants to split. So don't fight it. Because when it comes back to styling it at the end, you're going to realize that you're pushing the hairs in directions that they don't want to go in. Cool, now I have this haircut sectioned off. let me show you why I chose to section this haircut this way. So in the back here, I separated the entire back from the rest of the haircut. I know this is the area that has the most amount of issues in it. So this is gonna be what I focus on first. I have the side panel here, side panel on this side again. As you can see, if I tilt JP's head down, I separated the fringe completely from the rest of this haircut. Right now, I still have options with how I choose to cut this middle portion right here, but I'll get into that later. But I'm also gonna work on this before I work on the sides. And the reason for that is because visually, I wanna see how long I leave these corners, and that way I can use that as a guide to carry into the sides. Okay, so now we'll start with the back. I'll show you guys how we do this. So with the back here, because I mentioned it was the most troubled area, how I wanna kind of approach this is by taking some of these lengths in the occipital area shorter, and everything above that, I wanna cut slightly more round. I don't wanna go too short because again, the darkness of the hair and the roots actually reach about like half of this length. So I have to be pretty aware of that. I have to be pretty considerate of that because I do want to maintain a lot of this blonde color. So I'm gonna take my profile. You'll notice how internally I go shorter, which is okay because these lengths will sit on top of it anyway. So even though these lengths are gonna be cut just to black, that's okay because all the blonde from here will overlap it and you'll get so much more texture. The shapes that I want to use are not, I don't want you to focus too much on shape. This is more just about choice of length. But overall, from the occipital above all the way to the apex, it's gonna be slightly more round. Everything from the occipital below is going to be concave, which is also known as like a reverse triangle. Because I'm gonna be going from short in here to slightly longer out here. So pretty much the shape is gonna be this way in the back. And as it gets to the top, it'll slightly round some more. Okay, let's do it. Perfect, so now that we've cut all the lengths from the occipital down below, now that we're getting to the crown area, like we mentioned before, because these lengths were shorter and we're working with a slight disconnection, I actually want to grab my guide from the occipital, but I do not want to cut it based on where my guide is sitting. I actually want to let my guide drop off a bit and cut these lengths. Another way that you can ensure that you're going round is, again, use the comb. The comb is going to be right on the head here, and round just lets you know that you want to come off the base. Off the base means that you're coming directly off the head without any change in angle. Okay, so if I'm using my comb and the head as reference, directly off of the head, that's where I'll find my round surface. Okay, so use the head, use a lot of tension, and place your comb right at the root. Because your cutting line is not dictated by where your scissor is cutting the hair, but it's actually dictated by where these roots sit and the angle in which you're moving those roots. Drop half of this section, hold the previous, remove your clip. Next section in place. Again, we're using the head here, right off the head. There's your round surface. With these lengths being cut slightly shorter, I know I can now achieve a lot more volume, whereas before when we spoke about JP's hair, we were saying that it sits very flat. Actually, to compensate for the flatness of the back of the head, like I mentioned before, I have the same issue. You actually have to cut these lengths slightly more round when typically we're told to cut slightly square or triangular, right? And the reason why is because if we take these slightly shorter, it has more bounce to it. It has longer lengths of hair to sit on above it. And it just provides that natural volume that it's looking for, because you're ultimately just removing weight. Like we said, we're going round vertically, but we also want to go round horizontally. That's how we're going to achieve the most amount of texture and movement. I can see my guide there. Every time I cut a section, guys, I'm making sure that I'm laying the hairs down and I can see whether or not I like where it's sitting. It's a little harder to do while the hair is wet, but you should still be able to notice texture and where it sits. I'm liking where it sits because this is sitting a little bit below JP's occipital, but I know once it dries, it's gonna shrink. So it's gonna sit a little bit higher, which is exactly what I'm looking for. Another thing I'm looking for while I'm cutting is I'm always looking for a guide. If I don't see the guide, I'm not cutting the hair. There's my guide there. Still continuing this round shape. A lot of times what I may do in this very last corner section is cut it square. So I'm pulling it towards my body, especially when I'm on this side of the head. But for this haircut, I actually want to cut it round. Knowing how short these lengths on the side are going to be, I don't want such a big disconnection. So again, following the head shape, and the best way to follow the head shape is to take a step with every section. Unless your client's got an abnormally flat square head, to create a round shape, you're taking a step with every section. JP's head's weird, but it's not that weird. Kidding, man, your head's not weird.
It's okay, man. I forgive you.
So if we take a look at the side of the head that we cut, we can see how much texture and movement there is. You can see all the different lengths. But when you look at the side of the hair that we haven't cut, you can see how flat and bulky it sits. Now that we're getting to the top, what I want to make sure I'm doing is not mix up these back lengths with the front. Like the previous cut we also did, the back here has its own identity. I don't need to pick up these lengths and use this as a guide. I can actually work with the top completely separate. But one thing I do want to keep in mind is I'm not going to be cutting these lengths and taking sections going forward, because then I interfere with the fringe. And like I mentioned earlier as well, these lengths are going to be disconnected, right? So the easiest way for me to now be able to do that is to actually be taking sections backwards, especially in these two panels here. One thing that's going to keep me clean in this process is to actually clip away the back, so that even when the hairs fall back here, I know exactly where the separation is. With these clips holding the hair, I'm not going to run into any mistakes, or this is just going to visually help me a little bit better. And you'll see what I mean once I take these sections. Perfect, so we finished the top panel here. We actually used the slicing method on the top here. We went much shorter here in the apex to something slightly more triangular in the front, but still much shorter than all the lengths in the fringe. Now that I've cut the top, I need to work on the sides, and the way that I'm going to connect the sides is actually use a little bit of my very last section in the corner. Pull all of this down. Now when I pull these out, I actually have a guide from the top. I'll show you what I mean. So right here, is my guide. You guys can see those lengths. And these are all of the excess lengths. So I'm gonna use this length in the corner as my guide and be able to actually slice everything vertically while still being able to keep the perimeters and the bottom lengths quite a bit longer. So again, like similar to the back, same thing over here, we'll be going more concave, okay? This is what my cutting line will look like. All right, so our entire cutting process is pretty much finished. The last thing that's left is just the fringe here. So you can see, like, once I wet the fringe, it's actually a little too long. I was thinking during the process, maybe I just keep the lengths in the fringe. I'll see how it is at the very end of it. But I think trimming it very slightly will work. And I also want to keep in mind that I do want it to sit and complement the sides over here. So what that tells me to do is actually take the front a little bit shorter, just to allow the face frame to pop out a little bit more, and go slightly triangular, meaning all of these lengths are going to be over directed towards the middle, so that once I let it go and it sits naturally, they're actually left a little bit longer than the lengths in the middle. What that's gonna do is it'll keep shorter lengths right in the middle, but it'll frame his face and it'll connect into the sides a little bit better. A nice thing about cutting it that way as well is, if I wanted to at the very end, once it's completely dry, I have the option of picking up a few pieces and feathering it. I have options of picking up other lengths and cutting it. Personalization when it comes to more, not really creative styles, but more technical styles is what's gonna help it stand out more than any other haircuts you see. So we'll start with that, start right in the middle, and we'll work our way towards the corners. Perfect. So this entire haircut's pretty much finished. I'm happy with the wet shape. Everything's been cut in accordance to what we originally spoke about. Now what's left to do is to style this and personalize it. I'm gonna apply some product, dry the hair, and then I think at that point is when I'll be able to see what I like about it, what can be fixed, what I can remove. For this haircut, I want to use something that's more matte. It actually looks really cool with some moisture as well, but I want to see how much I can play with the texture while using a matte product, drying it, and then we'll get into the dry cutting process. Using this much product, make sure when you're using product, you don't want to start applying it when your hands look like this, okay? You actually want the heat from your hands to emulsify this product, almost melt it, so that when you're about to apply it, you don't really see anything in your hands. I'm gonna start with the top, where I wanna see a lot of this texture, get it to the sides. You may not always want to spread the product out that way. The reason I wanna do that is because I already know that the back is gonna wanna sit a lot heavier if I apply majority of the product into it first. So I'm actually dispersing the product into the areas I want the most amount of texture first, and then spread the rest later. With JP's hair, because there is bleach in here, it does have the tendency to dry very quickly and to get frizzy very fast. So what I think I'm gonna have to do by the end of it is actually apply a little bit of cream, but just in the ends of the hair, just so we're not noticing a lot of dryness or breakage. Or that's my thinking behind it. I may not have to, but just thinking out loud. All right, guys, so we got my JP looking fresh. You can see a whole lot of texture. At the end of the haircut, I actually refined quite a bit of it dry, and certain areas I did go in with thinning shears. I know a lot of barbers really hate using thinning shears and it has a bad rep in the industry, but I think if you use it in the right way, it works to your benefit. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you and say to use it throughout your entire haircut. I think for the refining and personalization part of it, Your thinning shears are actually really good at creating that very light, wispy texture, especially in the perimeters, which is what we did with JP's hair. But yeah, we retained a lot of the length in the nape so that you can actually see it flare out even from a front shot. Gave the top a lot of texture, still looks very visually connected, but the lengths in the crown here are actually quite a bit short. The lengths in the apex are really short. And even right along the parietal, these lengths are really short, and we get slightly longer as we get to the perimeter. Really like how this turned out. I love the way that the color looks with the really black roots. And yeah, gonna take some final shots now. Let me know if you guys like this haircut, what haircut you wanna see next. But this was the creative mod. We'll see you next time.